Satnam, everybody, welcome. We're just, I can see, we're just getting rolling here. More people are coming on. So let's give this a few moments.
I just see the three of us.
There's 35.
And Gurutrang, if you're not singing or doing stuff like that, could you put yourself on mute? We're all going to be on mute when we're not the center of attention. We're going to do Adgare Name, but after that, okay? So if any fire truck goes by or something. Okay, folks, so I think we should start. Let's put our hands together. Let's chant Adgare Name. Adgare Name, Jugadgare Name, Satgare Name, Shri Gurudev Name, Adgare Name, Jugadgare Name, Satgare Name, Shri Gurudev Name. All right, Vaheguru. Welcome everyone. This is our second webinar in our 2-webinar series, the True Life and Legacy of Yogi Bhajan. If you're interested, the previous one is available. You can watch that, and this one is also being recorded, and so that'll be available to you, and you can share it. I'd like to. This was Guru's grace, I would say. Gurutrang Singh may or may not be able to join us today. He was our main co-presenter on Sunday, but just last night I brought a call from Harjinder Kaur, who has great experience to share with us, and so she's a panelist with us, and also Gurutrang Singh from Virginia. He was very gracious to share a beautiful poem. He's a musician. You might know him from his hits, Get Out of Bed, You Little Sleepyhead, and the Yogi Tea song, and Satnam, the Grace Within You. These are old songs, but you may have heard of them. They're around. And he made a beautiful new poem, and I said, this needs a bigger audience. So I didn't want to be selfish and just keep it to myself. So he's on, and he will be sharing this with us later in our hour or 2 or 3 as we go along. So welcome everyone. So the point is there's a lot of you may have heard negativity around Yogi Bhajan these days. People are writing their books, and actually the purpose of this particular webinar being today and the day before was there's a fellow who's doing a webinar who's taken a very negative approach to Yogi, and so we wanted to provide a counter narrative or an alternative narrative, so people who maybe are just very new and maybe all they know is Yogi Bhajan according to his name is Philippe Desleep. If that's all they know, perhaps we can tell them, well, there's another version. Maybe there are many versions, and because we just weren't really getting the publicity. For example, I wrote a biography. Yogi Bhajan told me to write a biography, but it was never officially published. It never received the sanction it's supposed to get from New Mexico. So it's sort of an underground, unofficial biography. So I was commenting to some people that if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell your story. It's going to make them look really good, but it may not make the person, may not make you look very good. It may not make Yogi Bhajan look very good, and we've seen plenty of that. So we're offering counter narrative. You know what? Let's just have a word. All right, a brief introduction. Okay. Harjinder Kaur, who just appeared last night. I was saying, wow, I'm having a really difficult time getting somebody to co-present with me. You know, I had a list of people on the staff. Nobody on the staff wants to speak, and really hard to get a lady to. People are just swelling their underwear, it seems. There's just so much pressure. You know, maybe you have a business concern. You don't want to get bad business because of you know what position you're taking. But anyway, Harjinder, brave soul, she came up. She met Yogi Ji first in 1970 in Toronto. He first came here in uh, he came here in 68, and he met her when she was a girl in 1970. So she was daughter of, her mom and dad were friends with Yogi Bhajan. She lived in Espanola, right next door to Yogi Ji from 98 to 2004 when he passed. Worked in call security as head of human resources, and had considerable access. I mean, she was like his niece. He treated her like his niece or his daughter. And moreover, she had access that many of us didn't have the privilege of, because she could speak his language. She could speak Punjabi. She was fluent in American English, Canadian English, Punjabi.
Canadian.
Canadian, yeah. So would you just say whatever you want to say?
Well, I'm Punjabi background, born into a Sikh family. In 1968, my dad and Yogi Bhajan, who at that time was known as Harbhajan Singh Puri, became fast friends. In Toronto, there weren't that many Sikhs or Indians for that, point. So they liked each other. They became friends. 1969, we moved to Canada, myself, my mom, my brother, and I met him, Harbhajan Singh Puri at the time, or Yogi Bhajan at the time even, in 1970 in Toronto. Thereafter, every time he came to Toronto, Gurfateh Singh can attest to this, they came to our house. Everyone came to our house. He and his whole group came to our house because he considered us close. In 1998, he wanted me to come for ladies camp and solstice, and I went for solstice and ladies camp for a little bit of time. And at that point, I stayed on at his bequest in a way. I lived in a house. Our house was our backyard was attached to his backyard. So the proximity was right there. I exited my backyard, I was in his area right away. I could, wave over at people from my backyard that were in his backyard. I also cooked for him, which allowed me more access. And he was a smart man, and he knew that I could cook the way he liked eating, because it was a funny story. He said, I want you to cook for me because I like your cooking. And I said, you've never had my cooking. How do you know you'll like it? And his response, as the master debater he said, yes, but I've eaten at your house how many times? And don't tell me you don't cook like your family does. And I went, okay, point taken. You've got the point. You won this debate. And he treated me like a niece or a daughter. And so we debated and we spoke all the time. We spoke in English and in Punjabi. I preferred English because I was brought up in Canada and my English was way better than Punjabi. But speaking with him, I got practice and I got better. And he enjoyed that. And we spoke quite a bit. There's a couple funny stories that are pertinent to the issue at hand. And one of those is when I was getting married, he said, you marry him, but it will be like you're married to me. And as a child, as his niece or his daughter or whatever, the first response I had was, ew, gross. And he looked at me like, why are you responding like that? What happened? What did I just say? And I couldn't even get myself to say anything because it was just like disgusting to me to think that way. So I didn't even want to think about it. So his staff member that was there went over to him and explained to him, well, what she's saying, is this, and this is what she's perceived from that comment, and she's reacting. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? What? It was the only time I'd almost seen him at a loss of words, because he was so confused and so disgusted himself by what I had just said or thought, that he's like, no, that's nothing like that. So that's pertinent to this, because had I not said anything, I may have thought to myself afterwards, or kept perceiving or thinking, that that was a sexual innuendo. You know, it was meant to be sexual. There was something there that was not what I needed, wanted, or expected from him at that time. And so I'm glad that I, at that time, reacted, said something, and got an answer from him. Now, even though I'm from a Sikh family, it didn't even click to me. I mean, perhaps because I was raised in Toronto, and my Punjabi is not as great as I'd like it to be. It didn't click to me that the Guru Granth Sahib is written as a way of like beloved and marriage, and all of that has to do with spiritual marriage, spiritual bride, spiritual beloved, and religious. It has nothing to do with like the biblical sense in Christianity, which is sexual. So it didn't click to me that that's how he was speaking. But it did later, that when I started reading more in the translated Guru Granth Sahibs, that I went, oh, okay, ding, ding, ding. It's all coming to me now, that that's how he's speaking. That's what he's saying. And it made more sense. Another thing of interest is that he hired me to be the director of human resources for Akal Security. And when I got there in 1998, Akal Security was less than 2,000 employees. During my tenure, I was there for about 4 years. It went up to about 11,000 employees, mostly in the US and some in other countries as well. And my major job at Akal was EEOC claims. For anyone that knows about that, they're Equal Employment Opportunity Commission claims. So they were about harassment or discrimination based on protected grounds. One of them was sexual harassment. And my job was to investigate, find out the facts, learn what was happening, and respond to the government, and take actions against our employees who had done something wrong. Needless to say, if someone out in the field got a letter from me, they weren't happy usually, because I was sending them something saying, hey, you've done something wrong, explain this, or you're getting a discipline, or you're getting suspended or something based on what you've done. So my eyes of looking at, from an HR background, looking from an investigative background, upholding the tenets of harassment, discrimination of any form is not acceptable when it comes to that type of issue, like sexual or racial or whatever. I really upheld that, and I believed it, and I made sure Yogi Bhajan, when he gave me that job, Sir Singh Saab, when he gave me that job, I made sure he knew that I would not allow anything to happen. I would not, it's something that I couldn't have a job where I knew I couldn't make things be more right. So those eyes of looking that way, I couldn't leave them at the office. I keep these eyes with me all the time, wherever I was, including when I was around him, around his staff, around his visitors, around the Sangat, the people that lived in the area, around anyone. And I was fortunate enough to have had quite a bit of access to him and his proximity. And I can honestly say, personally, I never saw any inappropriate sexual conduct from him, by him, and towards me, anyone else at that time. I can only comment on what I saw, and what I saw, there was no proof to me. And as an investigator, my eyes were always open. I never kept them closed. I never walked around with rose-colored glasses, even though these are a little reddish. I never walked around with rose-colored glasses. I always kept my eyes open. I was always inquisitive. And I wasn't afraid to challenge him. Like the first, with respect to the marriage part. That was one example. To a point where, we didn't talk for 6 months at one point because I didn't like what he said. He didn't like what I said, and we just didn't talk. And that happens in family. But it had nothing to do with anything that could be remotely considered consistent to this claim of his. It was just a personal difference between me and him, which we had. Like, one of the problems I had with him was this is very funny, he didn't want me to drive. And if anybody has been to Espanola, it's out in God's country, basically. There's not much around. You can walk for quite a bit before you get to a store, and it's rural. So having a car made sense. Going to work in a car made sense. Other than that, I had to take my thumb out and hitchhike. Basically, I had to have people call, I had to arrange with people to drive me to work and drive me home. And I preferred to drive myself. So he said, no. Right now, the stage in your life is that you should not drive because you can do harm to yourself or because somebody will hit you. I said, I'm a very good driver. He goes, no, somebody will hit you. And I was in the debate team in high school. So I'm used to debating. I'm used to telling people what I believe. And I remember trying to debate with him where I would say, I'm a very safe driver. I got my license right away and I got the highest marks and everything. And he's like, yeah, but it's still going to happen. And so every day I'd think, how do I convince him that I'll be safe? And he'd say, I love you. And again, I love you. And I could have taken that I love you as a bad way, but I didn't. I knew it was in a genuine way that was not sexually based. And for me to have to say that at this point disturbs me. So he didn't let me drive. So I'm thinking, how can I convince him? So one day I was so happy with myself. I was so proud of myself. I had a great idea. I said to him, sir, I have the perfect method of how I can drive and I'm safe and nobody can hurt me. And he cocked his eye and he looked at me and he said, and I said, a Humvee. And he turns and he goes, you're too pretty for Humvee. And I'm like, I'll paint it pink. I'll put glitter on it. I'll make it beautiful. It'll be more beautiful than anything you've ever seen. And he just looked at me and said, shut up. Come on, stop doing this. You know it's not the right thing. And I went, okay, you're right. And so these were just little stories that I had with him. And we just have these interactions. But inside, I knew in a way that he wanted me to be safe. I knew he was right, that if he saw something, and he was so brilliant, and he was able to see certain things and know of things that I had no idea. And he was smart, he was funny, he was a good teacher. And I'll tell you, as I said, I didn't agree with him all the time. I didn't like everything he said all the time, but I respected it. Another story to just give you an example of things was just before he died in 2004, I remember I was in the dome where he was living at that time, and I was in his room, and I was sitting on the floor, and I just started meditating. There were other people around, and I just kept meditating quietly. And suddenly I felt this hand on my shoulder squeeze me really hard. And I jolted and looked up, and it was one of his staff members who turned and said, Ruby, it's late, leave. I looked around, nobody else was there in his room, just myself and the staff member. And of course, he was asleep already. And he had opened his eyes, and he looked at the staff member and said, leave her alone, let her continue to meditate. So the staff member was not amused, it was late. She wanted me to leave, and she walked out. So again, I'm sitting in his room by myself with him. I must say, I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt like there was a problem. I didn't feel like there was anything inappropriate. So to the point where, and I'll take the glasses off, as I said, I considered him like my uncle or my father. So I started winking at him like, and he's just smiling at me. And then I gave him a flying kiss. Now, if there was anything inappropriate or I felt like there was something wrong, I would not have done that, because I would not have accepted any untoward behavior. But I felt comfortable to give him a flying kiss, wink my eye that someone could have construed as sexual, but it was not intended. He giggled at it, and I felt good that, at that point it was towards the end of his life and he was in pain, and I made him giggle. I was happy. And then he closed his eyes and he said, continue to meditate. So I went back into my meditative position, and I continued to meditate for a while. And I must have been there way after 1 o'clock in the morning. Just what I can say is I didn't see anything that would make me, I did not see any sexual harassment or discrimination or anything to that effect. I did not see him acting sexually. I did not feel it. I felt very safe as a woman alone in his room. And that's another thing. People have asked me later, well, he had women stay in his room and all day, all night. And I went, yeah. And they look at me like, but don't you feel that's odd? And I said, well, in India, in my family, we have where if someone is ill or something, someone will stay the night. They're on duty all night to watch them, to be there. To me, that's not unusual. So I didn't find that unusual. I wouldn't find that to be that, oh, he wanted someone there. and it's a sexual issue. I would see that it's task oriented. There's a job to be done, and it's being done. That's one part. And also, the second part of it is, I don't know how well everybody that is a participant knew him or had contact with him, but I was there when he called Europe in the middle of the night, or he called India in the middle of the night, or when he was in India, he called the US. Because of the time difference, it was night a lot of times. And I was in India when he called me during the day, which would have been night in India, in the US. And I know that he had someone else get the numbers, dial the numbers, and do this for him. So for me, someone being there just meant someone was there. And I knew that he did not see himself as a 9-to-5er. You know, he did not see himself working just 9 to 5. He was working whenever it was necessary. He was calling people whenever it was necessary, or whenever he felt like it. So to me, that doesn't raise my eyebrows. And I'd like to end with, as a woman, as a mother of a girl, as a grandmother of a girl, I am unequivocally stating that I find it unacceptable and intolerable for anyone to sexually abuse anyone. I would not allow it. If I had seen it, if I had heard it, if anyone had said something to me, I definitely would not have accepted it. And I'm speaking today only about my experiences, what I saw, what I felt. And what I saw was, I never saw any sexual inappropriate behavior by him, and I never felt it either. Does that, Gurufateh Singh, any questions, anything, or Gurutrang Singh?
I think you were very eloquent. We're open. If somebody has a question, just do the chat function. Hopefully you can find that on your computer. But I think that was very eloquent. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I think you were mentioning in our discussion before that you were in contact, you were in touch with, you were social with practically all the staff members, and you're quite perceptive, and you didn't pick up any inkling of anything weird in your conversations. Nobody was talking about or vibrating that there was something off. Yeah.
Well, Gurufateh Singh, just to elaborate, because I cooked for him, because I spoke Punjabi, because I lived next door, I had quite a bit of access. Unless and until I didn't, when we didn't speak. He and I didn't speak for 6 months. At that time, I had no access. But I had a lot of access. And I got to spend time with everyone that was on staff there. And I got to know them very well. And because the community is small, and everybody talks and everybody's together, and you're always together in the same rooms, there's not many places to go. And when I wasn't driving, the
You
best
got to
thing
drive.
for, pardon
You
me?
got to drive. You got to drive.
Oh, later on I got to drive. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You won that one.
Hallelujah, brothers and sisters.
Okay.
But it's when I wasn't able to drive, the easiest thing for me to do was walk through my backyard into his yard and go where he was and where his staff were. And so I spent a lot of time there. And I spent a lot of time with them, and I never did see anything. Myself, I never saw anything.
Okay, good. Somebody did post a question, but I think you just answered the question in what you just said. So if you want to go on mute, then I'll just carry you through a little bit. No, you want
Can I say
carry
one
on.
more thing?
You can say 3 more things.
Okay. I withhold the right to say those other 2 things, but at this point I'll say one. Just so you know, I have nothing to gain or lose from being here and voicing my opinions. I'm not associated with any of his companies, those companies at this point. I do not have a book deal. I do not, I'm not making money off anything of the teachings, nothing to that effect. So I have nothing to lose, nothing to gain. What I'm saying comes just from me.
Great. Someone has just suggested that you know what? Talk to him a little bit about, somebody asked about Olive Branch. You've already corresponded with him. Want to say something about that?
Yeah, I have spoken to Olive Branch. I have recounted my information and told them what I saw, what I heard, what I would not give them gossip because gossip is useless. I can only give them assessments based on what I saw. As a person who has done investigations for these type of issues, I let them know that that's all I would give them. That's all that would be valid. And that was all that was relevant. I also made one more thing clear to them, was usually sexual harassment is he said, she said. In this case, it's only she said. Unfortunately, he is no longer, and he himself cannot speak and defend himself. And that's where I feel obligated almost to voice what I saw, because he is not here to defend himself. And the other thing I told the Olive Branch people was, it's sad that they were not around and did not get to see what I got to see or speak to him and get his side of the story. So it's sad. It's all very sad. If anyone else has any other questions for me, please feel free to ask. And if you think of it later, I'm sure Gurfateh Singh will ask me to come back and respond if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jeez.
Thank you. You know, I remember my first winter solstice in New Mexico. Am I in center screen? Yeah. I'm still seeing you. I wonder how this system works. Whatever. I'll tell this story. It doesn't matter what we're seeing. I remember my first winter solstice, my first coming together in Florida with the 3HO family. And I remember it was cold. I didn't bring a proper sleeping. There's just a few things I remember specifically. I remember the trailer park. I don't remember most of what he said, but one thing he said, mark my words. So I was new, but I marked his words. And he said that he was telling about his friend Swami Satchidananda, and that his secretary was making sexual allegations against him. And Yogi Tea said, mark my words, this is how Americans bring down their spiritual teachers. And so that didn't make sense for many years, but now it does. Is it sad? I mean, Yogi Ji, he took a line from Japji Sahib and put it on his tombstone well before he died, and it goes, "Ketia duk buksad mar ebi da teri da tar." It's like the wisdom of a fool. Any hardship, any suffering, any abuse that comes along, these too are your blessings, O bountiful one. And I don't find it sad. I find it's a trial, it's a test, it's a test for everybody. People with accusations, some people are calling them revelations. Test for the parents, test for children, it's test for everybody. One of Yogi Ji's, let's say the most amazing thing that Yogi Bhajan did, and I talked about this a little bit on the last webinar, but he gave us Satnam, which is so huge. The Satnam means the art and the science of being authentic, being true to your truest self. I mean, we may say, "Oh, come on in, put up your feet, have a beer, just be yourself, relax." But authentic self, Satnam, literally Sat in Sanskrit means is. So either something is or it isn't, right? So Satnam, as Yogi Tea taught it, as Guru Nanak taught it, it means be like a 3-year-old. Just be totally innocent, pure, fun, adventurous, fearless, in the moment. And Guru Nanak taught that. Most people don't know that. A lot of people will say, "Oh, Satnam, that's just a 3-age-old mantra." But the first Sikh historian by the name of Guru Das, he wrote up a history. In the very first couple of lines in his history, he says, I'll read in the Gurmukhi here. Namaskar Gurudev ko Satnam mantra sunaya, Bhavjala vicho khatake mukata padarat mara samaya, which in translation is, I bow to the divine Guru who gave the world the mantra of Satnam, pulling people out of the terrible ocean. He promptly gave them liberation. That's pure Sikhi, that's pure Sikh Dharma. And that's where Yogi Ji took us. He took us to the essence, not to the externals and the rituals, but he gave us the essence, which is be yourself. There's a beautiful book out of Australia. It's called the 5 Top Regrets of the Dying. I recommend it. And you can even find it synopsized. You can just look up what are the 5 top. But I'll tell you, the number one is not living your truth. Just pleasing everybody else, becoming an engineer because mom and dad want you to be an engineer, just dressing up and doing all the things that other people want of you, but not listening to your own heart and not living your destiny, not living your truth. And that's exactly what Guru Nanak taught. And that's exactly what Yogi Tea taught. And Yogi Tea would talk about being ahead of his time. And I very much believe that. In the 90s, a couple of fellows, Ryan and Desi, they wrote a paper which was historic. They wrote a paper in the field of motivational psychology. And it's called, the theme of it was intrinsic motivation. All right. I mean, it was really a new idea, but as scientists, as objective scientists, as Westerners, they were putting this to paper and they tested it. They talked about intrinsic motivation is the thing that you do because you really love to do it. You have intrinsic, and then there's extrinsic motivation. You do it because somebody's going to beat you or you're going to die or whatever if you don't do it. And then mostly we go a life through some combination. You'd rather be sailing, but you have a wife and children, so you work the job you don't really enjoy 5 days a week, and then you go sailing. But the point is, there's a motivation which is intrinsic. And if you're very lucky, you have a job that you just love to do. It's a life, you live the life. There's a saying, either do what you love or love what you do. That's totally the philosophy. And the reason that has not been articulated in the scientific literature, because nobody could help you to be intrinsic. Nobody knew how to do that. But Yogi Ji gave us the methodology. He said, Guru Nanak gave us the methodology. Amrita Vela Sachana Vadiya Vichar. Get up early in the morning and meditate on the essence. Who the hell are you? What the hell do you think you're doing? And meditate, Vadiya Vichar. Meditate on what's the meaning of greatness. Does it mean to have a big belly? Does it mean to have a big bank account? Does it mean to have a big harem? Is that what is the meaning of, what is the meaning of happiness? You know, we don't teach that in our schools, happiness. A lot of teachers are stressed. But it's very deep. It's very deep. And it's, sure, it's ahead of its time. But that's what Guru Nanak taught us, and that's what Yogi taught us. He taught us a very pure form. And at the beginning, Gurutrang will remember, I mean, we just, Sikhism, chanting Satnam, doing japji standing on your head. You know, it was all, Yogi didn't really make a big distinction. You know, we were Guru Sikh yogis. And, you know, you can get my book, you know, you can see this. You can download it for free. See, it's not a commercial announcement. I'm just wanting to educate with you. And I worked on that with heart and soul, putting that study of Guru Nanak and of Yogiji's saying, and of Sikh yogis, other than Yogiji, putting it together. And I published it and I put it together and I gave it to Yogiji before he passed, because I wanted him to see that we got it. Or at least I got it, and I published it so other people can get it. That, you know, it's a lifestyle. It's not a bunch of rituals. It's not an ethnicity. It's a lifestyle of being intrinsic, being real. We were hippies, you know? You know, be real, man. Are you spaced out? Are you laying a trip on me? You know, we had all ways of addressing people who, where are you coming from? You know, who weren't being authentic. We really valued that Satnam mantra. We kept our hair because that's a part of who we were too, you know? So that is the message. And one of the first things Yogiji did in his mission was to get the writings of Guru Nanak translated. Some of us know who translated. I don't want to make a big deal about that, but I'm just to read the beginning part of that, and talks about the age we live in. It's page 11 of the Peace Lagoon, which I don't sell, by the way. So, but it's just here. The age of darkness into which God sends his light by some messenger can easily be known by certain signs. The righteous are made to suffer. Honesty pays no worldly dividend. Those who profess to be spiritual make only some empty show, while no religious spirit is in their hearts. And the saints who love God in various revealed forms are slandered and abused. This is what Nanak himself finds, then criticize whatever he does. With the same unreasonableness in earlier days, the afflicted Muhammad and Jesus, they complained of all their actions, but the idle chatter of fools cannot shake the God inspired. Like his predecessors, Nanak knows well that such slanders, bravely borne, only serve to purify his own heart. The saint rejoices at trouble, for it too is the gift of all-loving providence, and sure to work to the good, if he be faithful to his God-given tasks. In mocking him, the foolish critics really mock at the infinitely wise, children throwing stones toward the sun and being struck by them instead as they fall to the earth. So that came out, I think, 1971 or 72, way before all this controversy. But you know, there's a pattern. You be authentic. People are going to take offense. People are going to make up stories. People are going to project on you, and you be a magnet for people's negativity. You know, it's you know, we have an agreement. Gurutrang and I, we're not going to get too deep into this, the accusations, but I did have an interesting conversation yesterday with somebody who's been around for a long time, not going to mention their name. He was telling me that he checked with a psychic, and the psychic told him that, yeah, the accusations, yeah. And Buddha was very sexual too. And I just rolled my eyes because, I mean, I know Buddhist history too. Buddha was a monk, for heaven's sake. He used to be a prince, but he was a monk. And why the hell are we consulting psychics? You know, if our sadhana is great, and this guy has a reputation, obviously, I can't say too much, but he considers himself an authority on sadhana. You know, if your sadhana is so great, I mean, you don't need to consult psychics. You know, Yogaji would say, he said once or twice, he said, you know, God bless the psychics. They dilute and pollute my faith. You know, who needs psychics, really? Be your own psychic. You know, sadhana is so important. And I won't say much more about that, but, you know, another thing just came to my mind, you know, and, you know, if you're a psychiatrist, you know, people do come to you with stories. and with traumas. And it's interesting for me as in my path. I mean, having written a biography, Yogi Bhajan told me to write his biography in '83, and I wrote other background stories. Well, I was waiting for its publication, and it just happened. Things come out of the blue. That one of my students started to. She wanted, and she was sharp as a, what do they say? Very sharp. She had an MA already from Cambridge in criminology. She had an MA from University of Waterloo in social work. Now she wanted to get her PhD in Kundalini Yoga as a psychiatric tool. And she got about 80 people with PTSD, and she put Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan to work on these people to see what happens. And it was a groundbreaking study. 3 academic papers. She co-wrote one of them with Safir Singh. I co-wrote a couple. And it shows this stuff really works. And the latest development in trauma treatment, is called body-mind therapies. Go through the body. Because for years, people have been, the idea is either drug somebody out of their pain or hear their story. And what we're realizing, a lot of people are realizing, and the best articulator of that, spokesperson for that is in Massachusetts, Bessel van der Kolk. You can look up his work. The body keeps score. Is classic text. What they're finding is just every time you tell your trauma story, you're just reopening your wound. You're pulling the scab, and it's not really that helpful. But this body-mind therapy, whether you do Tai Chi or Hatha Yoga, and Kundalini Yoga is very, very vigorous. If you do Kundalini, you can readjust your brain and heal yourself. It goes right into your vagus nerve, and the brain, which has been hijacked to the amygdala, the memory center takes over. You regain function here, where we say the third eye is. We call it the prefrontal cortex. Basically, you get your life back. You get your heart, which has been very rigid. You get back the playful heart. And you can measure that with a cardiogram. How somebody has trauma, their heart is very rigid. And somebody with a healthy heart dances. It's not heart arrhythmia, it's heart variability, it's called. So that's a study if you're really interested in this theme. But so trauma is there's so much of it, and there's so much sexual trauma in our Western culture. When somebody has a trauma, you want to hear them, you want to accept them. But frankly, telling those stories is not a very therapeutic model. Ironically, for all the stories we're hearing, doing Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan is one of the best things you can do. Now, I'm in touch with Premka, or we call her Pam, because she helped me with the biography. I need to know stuff and nobody can tell me, so I asked her. She helped me with some details of it. And I don't have enemies. I have people that I believe 100%, 99%, people who I reach out to, people who reach out to me. But I wrote her a letter after her book came out, and after I had some experiences on Facebook, some Facebook forums. People were giving me feedback when we put together particularly when we put together, other people put together, I was advertising the petition to keep Yogi Bhajan and the teachings of Yogi Bhajan. I told her, I was getting feedback from a lot of traumatized people. And I told her that, congratulations on your book, but be mindful that this Kundalini Yoga is maybe the very best therapy there is with people whose body and mind has been hijacked by trauma. It gets people their lives back. But I said, please be mindful and pray for these people who have been doing Kundalini Yoga or considering Kundalini Yoga to treat their trauma. Because now they see that, according to her testimony, Yogi Bhajan, who's a monster, created it. And if you have PTSD, sexual trauma, you're not going to want to do Kundalini Yoga anymore if you believe that. No way. You're going to say, hey, you're a freak out. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. And I don't think, she didn't appreciate my email. But that's part of the situation we're in. And I did want to share that. We have some questions and answers. Let me just check it. Did you see those questions, Harjinder?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one is about anyone who has made the allegations. From what I gather, not everybody's is public, according to what when I spoke to Olive Branch. So there are some of the people that I knew personally, and some of these people, it's things that happened a long time ago, which I wouldn't have known. I would only know the people that were there from 98 on, well. Anyone else before that, I may have seen them, but I did not know them per se. So that's one thing, but I didn't hear from anyone while I was there and who I met. The Costa Council Zoom meeting, I was not on it. I was not on the Zoom meeting. I did hear about it. And from what I heard, I mean, so this is hearsay. From what I heard was a lot of it was kids didn't like that they were in India for school, sent away, and certain things like that. So I'm sorry, I don't want to say anything about those things because I was not on the call. I did not hear it. I heard from someone who was on the call the gist of what they told me. And I feel it would be inappropriate for me to give an assessment based on something I did not hear or see. I hope that answers your question.
Good. Thank you. I think it's the best you can do.
And Gurfateh Singh, again, I have to reiterate, I will only comment and say things that I have seen or heard myself. I will not engage in gossip and hearsay.
That's why we love you so much. That's why we felt it's such a godsend you come. We know
Thank
you're a
you.
straight shooter.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did take in about a half hour of those from Sadhu Singh on to almost the end. Then I needed to go and do something. So I got about a half hour. I got about 7 of the testimonials. And one thing that I heard, yeah, and from elsewhere too. There's and from my son I heard a little bit too. You know, some of the children who did go to India. I mean, this is a massive social experiment. You know, Yogi Bhajan is trying to implant Satnam, authentic being, into Hollywood. Oh, you know, he just lived down the street from Hollywood. What kind of a challenge is that? How do you do that? I mean, sometimes I describe myself as a cultural engineer, second generation. That's what it is, cultural engineering. How do you tweak a culture? I did a couple of human rights cases. I was successful. Now, maybe partly because of what I did. And of course, back to what Yogi did, we have a more diverse culture in Canada, more respectful culture. We did little part. So now you can have a turban in the armed forces. And guess what? We got a minister of defense now with a turban in Canada. But you know, those are just little bits and pieces. It's a huge experiment to try and bring authentic being into an inauthentic culture. And how do you deal with it? How do you deal with first generation who had issues with our parents? I left home when I was 16. And then we're going to bring up children and we're going to have perfect parenting skills. Man, you know, it's difficult. It's like a general, you know, you're going to send troops in a certain direction. You know you're going to lose a bunch. Sometimes you're going to lose almost everybody, but you want to make the objective somehow, and somehow the war is won. But you strategically, you may lose a lot of people along the way. You may lose, I mean, Yogi Tea would talk sometimes about Moses, the story of Moses going from Egypt and their captivity to the freedom in the land of Israel. And he described, he said, you know, in the Bible it says 40 days. He says, you know what? It took 40 years. It took a generation to go through that because the people, they were in a slave mentality. For them to develop a mentality of self-mastery, to find themselves, took a long time. And I'm sure they lost children to scorpions and, you know, God knows the sufferings they endured that didn't get into the book. But it stands to reason. You know, you lose people, you suffer. You know, my heart goes out to all those. You know, Yogiji, if you read his biography, you can find it online, Messenger from the Guru's House. You know, he spent his last years, and Harjinder was alluding to it, in suffering. And so Harjinder Singh, who spent a fair bit of time with him, asked him, "Sir, why are you suffering?" And Yogiji said, "Well, you know, I'm a gambler." This is confession, you could say. A great man making a confession. But this is to the extent that he could confess. He confessed, "I'm a gambler. You know, I set people up for things that there was maybe a 99% chance they could never do. But there's a 1% chance. I bet on the 1%. He did that again and again, you know, and people suffered. You know, he put people to marriages that probably weren't going to work out. But if they would work out, they would be an inspiration to the world. He put people to marriages where, you know, the mom and dad maybe wouldn't be happy, but there would be a saint born out of that marriage. Maybe. You know, those are examples. He would send people, my God, to Russia, send somebody to, you know, all kinds of places, to Alaska, to set up an ashram, into Hawaii. Hawaii was just a graveyard. You go to Hawaii, everybody blisses out, they lose it. But, you know, knowing full well, you're going to lose people, but you just keep trying, and eventually the thing works. So he said, you know, I'm suffering for this. I'm suffering for all those people that I made to suffer. And, you know, God bless him. He saw that. He saw the suffering. What could he do? He was a general in that sense. You know, he was a commander-in-chief. He was setting us out. He gave me a biography to do, which was a thankless job. Only thanks I had. I just felt really gratified to be able to do it. There's no money in it. There's no, you know, there's nothing in it. Just the pleasure of doing it. That's karma yoga. You know, that's seva. You know, but you know, there's so much of that, and yeah, and the children certainly bore a brunt of that. They were children, 5, 6, 7 years old, getting beat up, and that's I mean, that's part of the legacy of what Yogi Bhajan did. It's true. It's true. There's no taking away from that. It's part of the big picture. If we isolate that and say, oh, that's the only thing Yogi Bhajan did, then we get lost. But yeah, we put people out into very difficult situations. You know, some of the youngsters were complaining about that. I got that. Some youngsters were saying that, you know, as adults, we didn't look out. We didn't take care when it would have been helpful to take care. You know, one of the biggest critics we have today, the fellow who did his webinar yesterday, Philip Sleep, I totally sympathize his position. I heard his story. I mean, for every story you get, whether you're in the field of justice or whether you're in the field of psychotherapy, you've got to know that within every story, there's a story. And so Sleep has written a paper. You can find it. It was published 8 years ago, called From Mahan Tantric, Maharaj to Mahan Tantric, something like that. I can link you to it if you email me. And he's basically debunking Yogi Bhajan, saying Yogi Bhajan, you know, first he was with Sant Virsa Singh, and then he's not with Sant Virsa Singh, and he learned all that he learned from just 2 yogis, and blah blah blah. You know, we can critique that. If you're interested, just text me. I'll go into more detail with it. But or you go to the recording that we made on Sunday. You can find that there. But you know, his experience was a very bad experience in Los Angeles. He was while doing his education, he made his money to cover his bills in Los Angeles, looking after a woman who was having cancer, very serious case of cancer. And the artist of the biography, Sirika Karkar, she knew this lady well. And what she saw and what this Leaf saw was that this woman who was in a very weakened state, her husband was going off having an affair. And nobody was speaking up about it. And so he got this very bad taste in his mouth that 3HO people are all, you know, healthy, happy, holy on the outside, but shit on the inside. Now that they help this vulnerable woman, and sometimes they just do really nasty stuff. And so of course he's out to debunk us. I understand that. There are parts that need to be debunked. And the children are saying that too. You know, as adults, you know, we're sending you out. You're going to be the hope of the future. La 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 la. And we're just screwing around. You know, we're not doing the sadhana. We're not walking the talk. We're just talking. A bunch of talkers. And I get that. I get also, and I made a promise on Sunday that I will, even though there's no authorization or encouragement, I'm not getting any encouragement whatsoever, but we need to have a biography of Bhai Sahib Dayal Singh Khalsa, who's you know, he was 15 when he came to these teachings, and he became the Bhai Sahib. You know, he became the spiritual authority. Yogi Bhajan gave him that spot because he was so pure and he was so great at such a young age. And he died in a car crash at 20. But he is so beautiful and so forgotten. But he was so good at, he spoke Punjabi. He was American. He learned Punjabi. His yoga was great. His reverence was great. He was so pure. But, you know, as a culture, as a Sikh culture, and I'm talking as overall, we love Guru Nanak with the white beard. Those are the pictures we put up in the Gurdwara. You forget the Guru Nanak was teaching as a boy. Guru Nanak was teaching at 20, 30, 40, before the white even came in. But no, the pictures are all, you know, this old guy, this Babaji. And we forget there's brilliance in the youth. There's brilliance in Guru Harshan as well. And the youngsters are picking that up too. They're not getting appointed to Khalsa Council. We're not listening to them much. Then we gave them a day. Finally, after years, boy, they let us have it, you know? So, Harjinder, would you like to say something?
You know, I just wanted to say, there was a time when I spoke to Yogi Bhajan about, I said, you know, I was peeved, for lack of a better word, with someone who I had to deal with. And I kind of said, you know, oh my God, why do you have this person around you? Like, they're nuts. You know, I don't agree with what they say, and I think I don't like being around them that much. Well, because they're not because of sexual harassment or anything, but they just, I didn't like who they were and how they spoke. And he said, you know, the one thing is that it's about being better. It's about teaching to become better. Just because someone's put on a turban doesn't mean that they are now the best that they could and should be. That is a process to get to. So what he was telling me was, they've started here. They're getting better. They're getting better. They may not be where you want them to be, but they're getting better. So when you say, you can't just stereotype everybody that was around him. There were too many people, too many Sikhs, people who had become Sikhs. And you can't just say everyone is the same. You can't say that in any society. You can't say that in any community. The person that spoke to me about the call with Khalsa Council with the second gens told me about bullying. And I can say, and this was my response to her, I said, show me a school where there is not bullying. I want to go to that school. I was an Indian growing up in Canada when there were very few Indians. Now there's lots of people of ethnicity. But back then, they picked on the Jewish kid before they picked on me. And I learned how to run. I learned how to fight. And I learned how to talk teachers into giving me rides home because kids were waiting outside to beat up the brown kid. I was the weirdo that came in with the weird food, to the point where I tell you, peanut butter and jam sandwiches are now my, comfort food, because they comforted me, because I took them every day for so many years, so I wouldn't be the weirdo. And so every school has these issues. I don't think you can say that bullying is contained in just one school. And honestly, grass is always greener on the other side. I wish I was sent to a school where there were people like me, where there were people who in the community where they lived would be considered outsiders or unusual or weirdos or misunderstood. I wish I was somewhere. I wish I had a group of other people that could be there with me. But I didn't have that. So I can say I didn't like my school, for how it treated me. And I hope and pray that we can learn how to educate people and have less bullying, because that would be a better world. But I think that's going to be slow, if at all. If we can do it, it's going to be slow. Just like Yogi Bhajan said, look at where these people started. They may not be where you want them, but they're better than they were, because they are willing to learn. They are learning. And that's what I can say. Then someone else asked about other things that were said during that talk. And I'm sorry, as I was not on the talk, I cannot. Again, I will not say. I can just give my opinion on what happened to me or what I saw. And my opinion of what I experienced, I wish I went to boarding school with other people like me.
Thank you. Thank you. Pritam Pal Singh is asking about, typically about the sexual allegations that were made during the webinar, the Zoom Khalsa Council forum. And, from the outset, our intent here is not to negate anybody's story. Rather, my philosophy, and this has come to me, think of this, neither we should, and whether you're head of HR or your police or your whatever, your psychotherapist, neither accept too hastily when somebody comes to you with an accusation. Don't accept it too hastily, nor dismiss it too lightly. And what I think is really smart is it's wisdom, really. Study the story within the story. Where's this person come? What's their overall story? Where does this story fit into the bigger story? And you can learn a lot. I know there are people aside from Olive Branch looking at these allegations and doing very, very solid work. And I've spoken to some of them, but I won't go further than that. God bless anybody who's hurt. They deserve healing, and they deserve a listening ear. I don't think listening is going to be the total solution. I think doing vigorous Kundalini yoga and having a spirit of community. I mean, frankly, there was just a survey done in my province here of Ontario that about half the people are going a little bit stir crazy with all this isolation. Their mental health's deteriorating. And I think that could also be a part of the phenomenon that we're experiencing. Everybody's in isolation. And when you're in isolation, if you're a yogi, you're in a cave, you're just getting more blissful. But if maybe you're not that way, you're going, you're having resentments. And whereas the Ketya Duk Buk Sadmar is you just be grateful for everything. The other mentality, and the survey did say 1/3 of Ontarians are grateful, but 2/3 of them are just really fed up. And they're fed up with this and they're fed up with that. And they just remember something from their childhood that they're fed up with. There's just a whole long list. So, so I don't have any direct comment. Certainly, we're not going to dismiss any accusations, but everybody's pain is their pain, and pain is pain. So that's what I want to say on that. I haven't seen anybody that really wants to hear about the sleep story anymore. Guru Tej yesterday spoke a little bit about Premka's or Pam Dyson's published story, because he does come into, he's a chapter of her story. And so you can flip back to the other recording and have him commenting on that. He says there are some inaccuracies there. Other than that, let's just leave the youngsters, that whole generation. They have grievances, and I will agree. I mean, I don't know all these grievances, but some of them I can say off the bat, they're right. They're right. And my, as I told you, my particular little contribution is I want to write the story of Bhai Sabdale Singh, what a great man he was before he was even 20. He was awesome. We need to acknowledge that kind of awesomeness as well. At this stage, Gurutrang Singh, how's your piece of art coming? You want to go off the mute?
Well, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Satnam. I've never been on a panel before, and I see my panel up here with the other people, and I'm on the panel now. So when I heard about this talk, I thought, you know, I want to celebrate the legacy of my beloved spiritual teacher. I didn't know we were going to go into, you know, a lot of details about other things. And, you know, this is all new to all of us, I guess. And, you know, it was shocking to me to, you know, to hear these things. And it's even more challenging, you know, to see my own family, my own son who went to Midi Pidi Academy, you know, the things, you know, that him and his classmates, you know, have talked about going through, and us, you know, coming to grips with him and, you know, the challenges he's facing in this. So it's a big deal. But at the same time, you know, I had to, you know, really assess myself and find my own center here, find my own power in the middle of all this. I don't want to negate anybody, and I feel love and compassion toward anybody who, you know, has, you know, the experiences that they've had. But I had to get myself centered in what I know. And so you know, I think it was a few weeks ago, we got this thing, you know, write a letter to the olive branch. And I pondered over it every day, and I couldn't figure out what to write or what to think. You know, I sometimes would be sarcastic. You know, I'd call them, you know, the olive oil and focaccia bread with some vinaigrette, balsamic vinaigrette. And I thought this and I thought that, and you know, I hear things, this and that. But mainly, I wanted to find my own power in this, and you know, I finally found peace in myself, and I feel at peace with everyone, every position. And I wrote this poem to give myself my own inner strength, and I want to share it with you because it has some history in it that you might enjoy. You may know, you may not know. I've written, you know, a good number of funny songs, and you may not know it. I sing very beautiful kirtan also. I've had some health problems that have been challenging. I just had major surgery a couple months ago. Things are good, getting better, stronger. And I want to share this poem with you and anybody here. You can hear my truth, And maybe you can find your truth in it too. Because one of the most important things I'm seeing here is everybody's mental health. My mental health, your mental health, your family's mental health, your children. How do we take this vast thing that's come about here and really get through it? So I'm going to share this with you and hope maybe it can help you. And I may get a little emotional because it's speaking from my heart and my experience. And so here I go. It's called What I'm 100% Sure of. I got to gather myself.
Gather yourself. I just want to say there are a number of personal references there. If you don't know Gurutrang, he's from Baltimore. That comes up. He cites the name of a number of his songs. Get Out of Bed and The Pure Satnam, The Grace Within You, and the Yogi Tea song, he cites that. His wife is Guru Mata Kaur, his son is Shabad Singh. So all of those things come up. So when they come up, just so you know what they are. You good, Gurutrang?
Okay, here we go. Thank you. I needed a pause. I'm going to try to, get through this. I'm 100% sure he was right and bright. When I first met him at the lecture that July 71 night, I'm 100% sure. He slapped my chest with delight, bam, and told me, don't worry, everything will be all right. And it is. I'm 100% sure that he inspired. Get out of bed, you little sleepy head, and go to sadhana like the Guru said. I'm 100% sure he woke me up so I could sing Little Buttercup. I'm 100% sure he was always there in his telephone chair to help us with our cares. I'm 100% sure he said, "You're a beautiful boy," and left an uncertain young man feeling more joy. I'm 100% sure he flew around the world 1,000,000 hours to deliver the pearls. I'm 100% sure I sat for White Tantric and left, and as he collapsed on the stage, absorbing my sickness. I'm 100% sure he helped me clear my inner space so that I could sing Satnam the Grace. I'm 100% sure he showed me the way, and I sang, "O Guru Ramdas, thank you for this beautiful day." I'm 100% sure he gave us the recipe, and we all chug-a-lugged a zillion mugs of that good old Yogi Tea. I'm 100% sure I was that little messed up Baltimore kid. Yes, I'm 100% sure about what Yogi Ji did. I'm 100% sure when I'm thinking chiropractic college. He nodded yes. Now I heal with the Guru's touch and share the sacred knowledge. I'm 100% sure he named me Gurutrang in meditation. Now I resound unto infinity with the true Guru's vibration. I'm 100% sure he received my French in-laws in Espanola and told Guru Mata, it's my wife, they were the best 3HO parents he ever saw. And boy, are they. I'm 100% sure he assured Monsieur and Madame Brantôme he would protect their daughter, get her enrolled in school, and find her a graceful home. I'm 100% sure he requested a letter of consent from her father for our marriage out of noble respect. I'm 100% sure I attended many of his live teachings, and we listened, learned, and loved in his aura far-reaching. I'm 100% sure we had fun and birthday cake with all our friends outside after class, and we all laughed and ate. I'm 100% sure he said, "You know that French girl? She wants to get married. What are your plans?" And I said, "Well, if it's okay with her, it's okay with me." And he performed our Khalsa wedding and took our families out to eat at the Golden Temple restaurant in LA. I'm 100% sure he gave us a jovial French nickname, Sou 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 and Sou Sou Son. Out of his fun and love it came. I'm 100% sure when I adjusted his spine so easy, he rose up and exclaimed, "You have really pleased me." I'm 100% sure he said, "I gave you the sweetest boy." And I say with all devotion, our son Shabbat is the most precious joy. I'm 100% sure when we left LA for DC, he put us in the able hands of Mukhya Singh Sahib, Gurutrang Singh Ji. I'm 100% sure Gurutrang Singh never failed to keep us safe and secure under the Guru's sail. I'm 100% sure when I am awake at night, I feel the Siddhi Singh Sahib's love and gentle guiding light. I'm 100% sure it's Guru Ramdas Ji, whose light we saw through him. Whose else could it be? I'm 100% sure it's Guru Gobind Singh's too, the light of Akal Purakh and Siddhi Guru. I'm 100% sure at a DC Gurdwara, District Washington DC Gurdwara, long ago, I sat before Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib and listened as he spoke. I'm 100% sure how it came so powerfully to me, how kind and innocent was Siddhi Singh Sahib Ji. I'm 100% sure, although I was not always there, every single connection with him was a heavenly love affair. I'm 100% sure he even tickled me, laughing too. How can I forget the Siddhi Singh Sahib Ji? I love you. Now I'm 0% sure, and I must be fair. I cannot say, I do not know, I was not there. I'm 0% sure what these stories are all about. All I hear is a lot of gossip, rumor, hearsay, anger, and doubt. I'm 0% sure, but I'm not laying any blame. They can think what they want, and I'll love them just the same. I pray for them with all my heart that they find healing and maintain. I'm just 0% sure. I cannot swear, and please pardon me. I must ask myself sincerely, was I there to see? And the answer is no. So within I go to what I'm 100% sure I know. I'm 100% sure what I know for me. I'm 100% sure. I was a little messed up Baltimore kid. Yes, I'm 100% sure about what Yogi Ji and these teachings and everything did. So I'll say a prayer for my lover, for my beloved teacher, Siddhi Singh Sahib Ji. Satnam.
Waheguru. Thank you, Gurutrang Singh. That's obviously from the heart, really from the heart. Thank you so much. God bless you. I see a bunch of folks really appreciate that. What do I do as a follow-up act? I'm going to just address a question that wasn't answered on Sunday. It was quite a switch in tempo and mood and subject matter. But somebody asked about a transition that was made from early on. Yogaji would teach us to chant Wah Guru. That we had a song, Gurutrang would sing Wah Guru, Siri Wah. We had a lot of songs we used to sing. We don't sing anymore, but they're ingrained in me. And so there was a transition from Wah Guru to Wahiguru. We would chant Ikkunka Satnam Siri Wah Guru, and then we were told Wahiguru. It's true there was a transition. I don't remember the exact details of it. My name had a transition. You know, Yogiji, when he came here, first time he came to Toronto, I asked him for a name, because the old name didn't really seem to fit me anymore. So he wrote it up, and I still have it. He wrote G-U-R, capital G, capital F-A-T-H-A, Singh, right? And that's what it was. And that's according to the tradition of that time. People got the name. Like there's a Gurutrang Singh, not Guru, but Guru. And so that was fine for about a month. And then I got a letter from Shakti Parwakar, his troubleshooter, and she said, no, actually it should be Guru. So stuff changed. I think Yogaji was figuring things out as he went. And so it was. Some people, you know, there was a discussion later on. Did you make a name like Guru Tej one word or two words? And, you know, I'll tell you a little secret. We had a guy who was a real bully. I mean, for me, it was a blessing. You know, his old training. We had a guy in charge of our ashram in Toronto who was a bully. He would literally beat people up, men. And so I said, you know, okay, it's all a blessing. It's the training. But he asked me one day, should it be together or should it be apart? And the guy was such a monster, from my point of view. I said, wow, you know, he's going to be worse if he considers himself, you know, on level with Guru Nanak. I mean, that's what Guru Nanak taught. Yogiji said be 10 times greater. Guru Nanak, he trained somebody to come to his level. But just to bring this guy down a little rung, I said, no, it should be together. Otherwise, it looks too authoritative. And so he did. And you know what I did? I played along. So I put my name together too. I said, no, this guy's a monster, and I'll just do my little bit to keep him down. He stayed with us for another 12 years or so, and then thank God he was gone. And then after a while, I went back to the original spelling, which is how it was given to me. But then, you know, there was discussion, and there's no unanimity. Some people today still write 2 words, 1 word. This kind of things have come up. There has been transitions here and there, not much. Pretty much the message has been quite consistent. So I'm going to check again. I mean, if you folks have questions, if anything's unanswered, don't say we didn't answer your questions. We're just looking for, okay.
Can I say something?
Go. Somebody just said, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful, inspiring poem. That's Manmeet Kaur. Okay.
Thank you.
Else? Yeah.
I just thought maybe I would play a song if you want. I don't have to. I'm okay. I'm not attached. And
go for it, man. We're running out of stuff to talk about. Oh, you want to sing Long Time Son?
Well, maybe when you get to the end, when you're at the end.
We're maybe not quite at the end. Go play something.
You want me to play now?
The acoustics are a little bit weird because, you know, there's I think if I'm going to go on mute because there's an echo effect. But we just hear you and we all sing wherever we are in Singapore or Abu Dhabi. You know, I think it's going to be great.
All right, I'm going to play a song. Can you hear me? Well, in this world of troubled time, when bad drink's on the run, and everything you're sipping makes you weird, well, here's a tip from me. It's gonna set you free. It's the best darn drink in the universe, and they call it Yogi Tea. Chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Come on, sing with me. Chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Well, you can have your Maxwell House and your Lipton tea, but there's only one that suits the likes of me. Give me a chug from another mug. Give me a chug from another mug. Give me a chug from another mug. That good old Yogi Tea. Here's how you make it.
Now boil them up, cinnamon, cardamom, clove, ginger and peppercorn too. And add some milk and honey to the brew. Well, pass it around, everybody drink it down and let it flow through you. Then join into the harmony of the Yogi Tea drinking tune. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Yogi Tea. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Well, you can have your Maxwell House and your Starbucks too, but there's only one suits the likes of me. Give me a chug from another mug. Give me a chug from another mug. Give me a chug from a doggone mug of that good old Yogi Tea. Now your backbone's aching and you got a cold and you're feeling really old. And the doctor's giving you a bunch of pills to eat. Well, throw away those drugs and get yourself a mug and smack your lips and do a flip and take a run around the block. Everybody now, chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Yogi Tea. Chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Well, you can have your Maxwell House and your Lipton tea, but there's only one that suits the likes of me. Well, give me a chug from another mug. Give him a chug from another mug. A chug from a mug. A mug from a chug. A chug from a mug. A mug-a-wugga chug. A chug-a-wugga mugga. Chug-a-lug. Chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Well, chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, a mug of Yogi Tea. Well, you can have your Maxwell House and your Lipton tea, but there's only one that suits the likes of me. Give me a chug from another mug. Give me a chug from another mug. Give me a chug from another mug of that good old Yogi Tea. Yeah.
The one and only Gurutrang Singh. Why
Eat
Guru?
your heart out, Captain Karma.
That's another song, Captain Karma. You know that song? Can you play that song?
Oh, God.
Not right now?
Seriously?
Seriously.
All right. Is everybody raising their hand? Do you want to hear a song? Okay. They call him Captain Karma. He's the Lord's own right-hand man. He's the one that put that worm in the apple that you steal from the fruit stand. Well, he's fast, he's clean, he's cool, he's keen, he shoots straight from the hip. If you can't stand no trouble with a man, watch your mind and watch your lip. Well, the cap went down the street one day, making sure the parking meters worked all right. And he stepped into a bar to see the bullies lost the fight. Now he's walking down the alley, causing floods in the valley, making selfish plans fall through. He's a trick in your knee, he's a stinger in a bee, and he ain't too busy for you. No now, ski-la-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da-do, wa-dee-la, ski-la-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da-do. Now, you may think you're great, you may think you're first. In October last, I tried to sneak one past that man's ever watchful eye. Well, that life got thick, it seemed like bricks would fall right from the sky. Now that man's not fooling, just try to break a rule in this rough, tough Aquarian age. He'll have you tied and deep fat fried and mail you to a Saturn sage. Ski-la-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da-do, wa-dee-la, ski-la-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da-do. You may think you're great, you may think you're first rate, you think a man's never walked that tall. Well, that old captain knows the ego you're trapped in. Pride goeth before the fall. Now the highest of the high, come back next time as the world's lowliest creature. Don't stumble no more of them roaches on the floor, they're all former spiritual teachers. Ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da, re-la-dee-da-do, wa-dee-la, ski-la-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da-do. They call him Captain Karma. He's the Lord's own right-hand man. He never spares the rod when you mess up on the job. He's the one gets you can. Now you just can't stop that old cosmic cop when the warrant's out on you. No place too high. The man's a bona fide detective for the Wagaroo. Ski-la-ree-la-dee-da, dee-da-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da-do. Wa-dee-la, ski-la-dee-da, ski-la-dee-da, ski-da-dee-da-do. Now some folks say about the captain that he works in strange ways. Well, it ain't so weird to see the way it's geared. What you owes is what you pays. Now don't blame that guy when troubles come from the sky. He just does what the Lord wills. The guru's your protector when you meet the collector. Say Satnam and pay your bills. The guru's your protector when you meet the collector. Say Satnam and pay your bills. Wow, 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 wow. The guru's your protector when you meet the collector. Say Satnam and pay your doggone bills.
Waheguru.
Now here's a word from our sponsor.
That's right. That's right. Good. We did have one question about, that we're putting up are you seeing the questions there, Harjinder? You see the last one?
I was actually just about to answer it, and I'll answer it here. Anonymous attendee had a question. As to what I saw, and maybe he didn't find me attractive. I'm okay with that. My answer would be, I don't know who and what he found attractive. So yes, I cannot state what he found attractive. And I am not going to give anything based on something I have not seen or heard. I'm only here because he is not here to give his side of the he said, she said. So I'm giving what I saw, and that's all I can do. I'm sorry if it's not liked by everyone, but it's just what I saw. And I'm not going to give any opinions. I can give assessments based on what I saw, but I'm not going to give any opinions. I'm not going to give any gossip. I just spoke what I physically saw, what I physically heard, what I physically perceived based on my transferable skills as an investigator. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. And I'm gonna say one more thing. I'm the first to say I do not and will not tolerate anything that is, anything that is inappropriate that way. Any abuse, I would not. I don't care who would do it. I don't care when it was done. I would find it totally unacceptable. And that's all that's my response. Mr., Miss, or Mrs., whoever it is, anonymous, I hope you accept it from where I'm speaking from, is just giving my observations. If you have any further questions, I would be more than they're more than welcome. And for anyone who has had in their life, has had a bad experience, I would never negate it. I would never, ever negate it. I would never, ever think less of it. And I would respect that person. So anyone that knows me, as Gurfate first said, I'm a straight shooter. I say what I say what I think, and I've gotten in trouble for that. And I don't like things being shoved under a carpet somewhere. Here's one thing for those that don't know me. When I was younger, my mother used to say, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Because I was the one in the family that if anything happened that I didn't like, I said it. I didn't care who I said it to. So just so you know, I would not accept it and do not tolerate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Harjinder. Yeah, you know, my impression is there's so much trauma just floating, sexual trauma. There's so much of it in our culture that it's just floating out there. There's not that much knowledge of Yogi Bhajan. There's not much knowledge of his work, and that a lot of it was in empowering women. And I mean, he saw that was one of our big problems here as a Western culture. We had, when we came in the 60s, and there was the topless bars. If you haven't heard of topless bars, it's bars where the waitresses have no tops on. And there's the strip clubs. I mean, you didn't have that in India, you know? And basically women are bought and sold in advertising and la 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 la, and business trips, and, you know, to get a contract, you bring in some hookers, and, you know, that's just how business is done. And he was very outspoken about that. He wrote it. There's an article that came out once, a lecture is called How America Kills Its Women. I mean, spiritually, you're killing them. And so I think a lot of people who are coming down on Yogi don't know his history, don't know the man, don't know his work, don't know the women's camp that he put together, where women learned not only yoga and healing arts, but they learned self-defense and how to shoot a gun. They don't know that story. All they know, well, I mean, it's become, I mean, there was a time of 15 years ago where it was trendy to say that all great men were homosexual. So there was Michelangelo, and Jesus Christ was homosexual, and Moses, everybody was gay. I mean, that was the trend. And now the latest thing is any great man, very likely a sexual abuser. And I mean, for heaven's sake, you know, I get my little bit of that on Facebook as well. You know, just unfounded stuff, unfounded. And so it's the trend, and what we need to be wary of these tidal waves of emotion, and tidal waves of conspiracy, and tidal waves of bias, which come and just consume us. And it's interesting that, and we're lucky we have some sharp people still in this community. Gurutrang Singh, I had no idea, but he was one of the pioneers in researching the sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Before the Boston Globe was writing about it, he was doing that work. He was doing that work as a prosecutor. If you're interested, if that interests you, email me and I can send you the link to his statements about that. He's very articulate, and you know, he's warning us about a lynching mentality. He's warning about the madness of crowds. There's a book called that. I think it's called. That's half the title anyway. I can look it up for you. You know, there's a mentality we need to be wary of. Just we're all cooped up with our thoughts here. Not to negate anybody, but I'm just saying, you know, I can read handwriting. Seriously, graphology, and I've read Yogi Ji's writing, and you know, when you're corrupt, it shows up. It shows up in how you speak. Yogi Ji would say, you know, you can read somebody from, they just speak 3 sentences and you can read them. So I've heard a lot of Yogi Ji's talk, and I've watched him walk. I've watched his bearing, and nothing speaks corruption to me. That's about all I can say. What his bearing speaks to somebody else, that's a whole other story. But I'm very grateful to have Gurutrang aware of the situation. I know there are people doing investigation outside of the olive branch, very competent, very sharp people. They're looking at not only the stories, but the stories that those stories are a part of. And they're doing very interesting work. And I think we're, give us a question quick if we're gonna get the question today. Otherwise, you can email us afterwards. I think we've got the last question. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I think it's Long Time Son.
Okay, coming right up.
Thank you all. Thank you so very much for participating.
May the long time sun shine
upon you.
all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on.
Thank you, Gurutrang Singh. Thank you, Harjinder Kaur. Thank you, everybody, for participating. People have been asking about the recording from Sunday. You'll be getting the recording from this. I'll be sending you an email with a link to this. I'll also give you the link for Sunday. And I may as well, Gurutrang, you mind if I give them the poem?
Give them what?
The poem.
Okay, how do we do that?
Oh, I can, you send it as an email, right? I'll send them the email.
Let me, I've kind of been chiseling and kind of working around the edges. So let me send you a final draft and then
When?
in an hour.
Okay. So after an hour or so, you'll get the link to this, the link to the last one, the link to that. And you know what? Just for the heck of it, I'll link you to Guru Kirit's pieces on this controversy. And feel free to email me anytime with any questions. Always happy to be of service. Thank you all for making this possible. Satnam.
Thank you.
Satnam.
Satnam. Gurfate, if you want to stay on, I'd just like to speak to you at the end.
You want to phone me or you want to speak to me?
I'll phone you. I'll phone you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Satnam.
Satnamji.